For this week's Smith Business Close-Up, we're on location at the University of Maryland. And joining us here at the Robert H. Smith School of Business is Joyce Russell, Senior Associate Dean of Learning at the Smith School. Thank you for being with us.
It's great to be with you, Jeff.
Let's focus in on how technology is changing here in the academic world. We're sitting in a classroom. It looks pretty much like it used to.
That's true, but let me go back to the mission of the school, because I think that will help understand what we're trying to do here at the Smith School. So our mission is really to promote a learning environment that fosters intellectual discovery, that equips current and future leaders with assessing complex problems and delivering innovative solutions. So that's a mouthful, but it really is telling, because it points out that the world today is so much more complex, and employers are telling us that your students, any students, need to be better prepared to deal with the workplace. And so as a result of that, we really have to do more in terms of the kind of learning that we're offering and delivering to our students, and that's where technology comes in.
So on top of the old lecture hall, where a professor would speak, students would take notes, there'd be some question and answer, and then there would be a test. What's the most valuable add-on to that?
Well, I think we're doing a couple of things. What we like to do is, first, just the technology, the delivery, so the pedagogy. So not just the podium in the lecture room, but also, if we use blended classrooms or what's called flipped classrooms, where people can do a lot of things off before they come to class, so they can watch videos and be in discussion boards, etc. Online education, we're in that space as well. So the pedagogy has changed a little bit, so that not everything is just the person standing up in front of the classroom. That's one thing. The other thing is more experiential learning. So that's what we would really like to do. I mean, if you're really trying to deliver innovative solutions, then you've got to be able to not just think about taking a finance course or an accounting course, but you have to be able to pull them together. And you have to be able to solve these problems that are cross-disciplinary. So we want our educational system to have a lot more experiential learning built in, so that students can solve problems and that they're working on really interesting projects.
Is that harder to grade? Maybe that's a small issue, but when you're taking a test, there's a right answer and
Sure.
a wrong answer. In a lot of these scenarios and exercises, there isn't necessarily a wrong answer.
Well, I think we're looking at, that's a great question. We're looking at critical thinking skills. That's a real big push for us. And so to what degree do they expand sort of the breadth of the answer, the depth of the answer? Do they bring up points that are really relevant? So we have a whole critical thinking, really kind of a program that we're doing in all of our programs from undergraduate up. And so it's more of the process. What kind of skills are they using? What kind of knowledge are they using? And how are they pulling it together? So is it more difficult to grade? Absolutely. Is it better for the student? We believe so.
So you said corporate America, the end customer for
Sure.
the product, the students that you graduate is asking for this. Why? Is it because just as academics are changing, the corporate world is changing too?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they recognize that students have to come in at a higher level, that they have to solve more difficult problems. I mean, we have a global landscape. Things are coming at them much faster. They have to deal with a lot more information. They can't just know like a content area. They really have to know how that content area works with another content area. And so so global issues, cross-disciplinary issues, integrative kinds of problems. So yeah, I think they're demanding more and expecting more, and our students even find that on job interviews. They tell us that the questions are much more complex about, what would you do if you were the Fed chairperson, and how would you solve issues today?
How does what you're doing compare to what other business schools are working on?
Well, I think top business schools are doing similar types of things. I mean, I think they're looking at, first off, what's their portfolio of offerings? So we talk about what do we want to do to improve the educational experience, but then we also want to be more flexible to the audience. So we teach not just undergrads, but graduate students, and so flexibility. So that's why we have blended programs. We're just getting ready to graduate, in fact, 2 days, our online MBA students. So we're offering different kinds of models because the audience is different. And I think from sort of corporate America perspective too, they want people to be at a higher level of education and knowledge. And so if we can really provide education for a diverse audience, I think that really helps us.
What do you think all of this looks like if we go out 10 years?
Wow, that's a good question. I wish I knew that. I think we're just going to keep moving in terms of new and different forms of pedagogy. I mean, if you look at elementary school today, it's not like when we went to school. Not that that was that long ago, but
of course not.
It's really not that, they're doing online classes. They're doing blended and flipped, classrooms. They're doing projects. They're out there in the field. So they're actually further ahead sometimes than the colleges and universities. So I think our students coming up are so much more advanced. And so where will we be in 10 years? I think that we're just going to keep coming up with innovating new ideas for how to share knowledge. And we'll probably do more global partnerships where students can learn at any different kind of location.
So some of this is top down in that university administration says this is what we need to be doing, but it sounds like some of it is bottom up in that this is what the kids want and know how to do.
Yeah, I think and from the employers. So I think take all those different audiences together, and I'd say that it's really how do we better prepare people to solve these really difficult problems today. And so from students, from administration, so from employers, from a variety of sources.
Very good. Joyce Russell joining us here at the Smith School. Dr. Russell, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
For this week's Smith Business Close-Up, we're on location at the University of Maryland. And joining us here at the Smith School of Business is Dr. Joyce Russell, who is the Senior Associate Dean of Learning at the Smith School, also a newspaper columnist. Dr. Russell, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
In your newspaper columns, you've been writing about effective leadership, which is an interesting topic heading into an election cycle. How do you look at it?
Yes, I love writing about leadership and teaching leadership, which I am right now, during a political year. You always have a lot of interesting things that you can write about. So I'm really trying to get people to focus on what would you look for in a candidate that would be similar to what would you look for in an organization if you're looking for an effective leader or an effective CEO. What are the attributes or the behaviors that you should be looking for that we know are linked to success based on research?
So the political process is messy. It's quite different from a well-organized search and interview process. Are there any similarities? I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it could work better.
That's a great point. In terms of similarities, I don't see a lot of similarities. But I do think that people are looking for similar characteristics for either type of leader. The process is not necessarily the same because in an organization, I mean, it's generally a pretty extensive selection process. You'd use a lot of assessments. That you'd be basing on a lot of work experience. So in the political process, you're looking at other types of experience sometimes. It may not be necessarily political experience. It could be different types of work experience.
What are the characteristics that you would look for in a new leader, whether it's political or corporate?
Well, I think the characteristics are the same. I think what people are looking for is they're looking for a person with charisma, positive charisma, so really good communication skills and has a message of hope. No matter what kind of company it is or if it's, the United States, we're looking for hope. We're looking for optimism for the future. So that's really important. We're looking for inspiration. We're looking for a person who has a message that's really inspiring to people, that connects to the whole diversity of audiences. And once again, it doesn't matter if that's a presidential candidate or that's a CEO of a firm. We're looking for someone that, we call it individualized consideration, a person that makes people feel valued so that any person interacting with them or listening to them or working with them can say, I matter. And that even no matter what my background is, that I bring something of value to the table, that you know who I am and that you see my talents. And we're also looking for somebody who has strong emotional and social intelligence. And by that, there's a lot we could talk about with there, but there we're really talking about great self-awareness, empathy, self-monitoring skills. So there's a lot of factors that we're looking for. But these are the things that are related to really successful leaders.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about some of the one-on-one characteristics of people that in a country of 300 plus million people, we can't all directly sit across from and interview the prospective president. But the idea that the process starts in some smaller states where retail politics is important maybe injects a little bit of that into the process.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, once again, people are looking for someone they can connect to, someone that understands where they're coming from or can relate to them. I think the connection piece is very important. And does that person resonate with them? And that's where charisma it really comes into play, because charisma is interesting in that if you have really good communication skills, you can draw an audience in. Now, there is what we call the dark side of charisma, where you can draw them in and then take them down some path that perhaps isn't a good path to go down. So that's the trade-off with charisma.
What are the other characteristics that maybe corporations would know to avoid, and the political process could also expose in people?
Well, we actually also measure oftentimes something called potential derailers, things that, a person can be very successful, but then sometimes they derail or go off the track. And there's a number of assessments that you can use to measure that. And so things like derailers would be, are they overly cautious and they can never make a decision? Are they overly arrogant and think that the world centers around them and somewhat narcissistic? I mean, there's attributes of some of these characteristics that are valuable, but if there's too much of them, you can cross the line where it becomes problematic. And so that's where maybe they're overly diligent, or they're a little bit passive aggressive, those kinds of things.
What's the famous personality test that some companies have people fill out? Myers-Briggs?
Well, yeah, you can use the Myers-Briggs.
Should we require presidential candidates to fill the thing out? That would be interesting.
I tell you, I would love them to fill out what we call the Hogan assessment inventories, because that gets at your personality, your strategic and tactical skills, which would be your cognitive side, and then it gets at your potential derailers. I'd like to know what those are.
Maybe in the next debate.
Okay.
Joyce Russell joining us here at the University of Maryland's Robert H. Smith School of Business. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeff.